Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Marxist Technocrat. In this episode we'll explore Marxism and Socialism. This is currently a two-part series in which part 1 answers the question once and for all, what is communism? Particularly in comparison to capitalism and socialism, using simple examples. But communism doesn't work! You often hear in the news that communism and socialism has failed wherever it is implemented. But that is simply put not true. In fact, the understanding of socialism and Marxism has been so twisted that most people don't know the truth from the lies. Communism currently doesn't exist in its fullest form, but have existed in ancient times in a more primitive form, while socialist programs already exist in many nations around the globe in the form of democratic socialism, whether it be universal healthcare or fair wages. So let's begin by distinguishing what the difference between socialism and communism is. Socialism is a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Communism is a theory or system of social organization in which all property is owned by the community and each person contributes and receives according to their ability and needs. What isn't socialism? Socialism doesn't mean taking wealth from those who work hard and giving it to those who don't. Robin Hood is not a socialist. He's just a thief. What you're thinking of is actually capitalism. What then is capitalism? Capitalism, in contrast, is the concept that everything and everyone is capital, and by definition is exploitative and exploitable. Do people want to work 12 hours a day with no minimum wage? That's capitalism for you. But you can argue the reverse is true, that capitalism in and of itself doesn't really work. Here's an example of capitalism and democratic socialism at work. Socialism and communism at work. Unions are by default socialist, as they brought you minimum wage and a cap of 40 hours work week. Although as mentioned before, this is working within the frameworks of capitalism. Thus, we can see that democratic socialism can be considered as the latter stages of imperial capitalism. The whole idea of communism is based on the concept of community, which makes decisions for themselves. If said community owns their own means of production, then they can do things when it needs and wants to, and not be told what to do by corporations or political elites. This is essentially the idea of communism. If we think of democratic socialism as a process of capitalism, then socialism is a product within communism. Looking at it in reverse, you can have communist programs within a socialist society, and capitalism in a socialist economy. Sounds familiar? People will often say that China is midway between the two and is stuck between the capitalist and socialist phase. I beg to differ. China is generally a socialist society with capitalist tendencies and communist characteristics, and arguably has been this way for many thousands of years in different forms. Sounds confusing? Before I give an example, let me describe what Karl Marx calls dialectical historicism, or the 5 distinct stages of history: slavery, feudalism, capitalism, socialism, and communism. He argues the movement of history is not linear, but cyclical. For history is the era of primitive communism. This early stage is in essence hunter-gatherer society and nomadic egalitarianism, where humans were tribal because their survival, both independently and as a species, required cooperation and mutual self-giving to each other. So people tell you that communism never existed, point them to ancient times. Here are some facts. Socialism is not a stateless or classless society. A common misconception was that Marx was actually anti-civilization, anti-imperialist, and thus anti-capitalist. He himself actually believed that the advancement of civilizations and imperial conquest was the necessary unfolding of historical development. Marx's anti-capitalism is not the rejection of the need of capital development, but its analysis of what the inner workings of capitalism is like and the mystery problems and conflict that it can produce. Simply put, how these things are implemented make a difference to the outcome. I believe that this is where the difference between socialism with Chinese characteristics differ from the Western model, and where China differs from the West throughout history. For capitalism, war and peace are business and nothing but business. Going back to more dialectical historicism. Marx's analysis of capitalism includes how democracy begins in capitalist history as the bourgeoisie class, in their rise, seek greater political power and representation. He then goes to express that capitalism develops to a point of stagnation, which leads to stagnation in democracy. The end result is the influx of capital into democratic systems and institutions, causing bureaucrats and levers of political institutions to work for those who have the most capital, who, due to competition over the scarcity of resources, then merge together to form monopolistic competition. Still don't get it? Here's an example of socialism and communism at work in comparison to capitalism. An example of communism at work are tractors which are purchased by farmers or governing bodies through socialist programs or investment and given to communities as communal equipment. These tractors then belong to the farmers and the families in the communities, who then maintain and use them with minimal involvement by the government. They can decide amongst themselves who and when to use these tools, and if they want more, they can also do so by buying more, or in the communist future, create them themselves. The governing body simply acts as a middleman in the case of disputes, or sometimes in negotiation with corporations. This is already happening in China today. So here we have an example of 4 farms, A, B, C, and D, with different needs and capacities. In this example, the 4 farms call upon the communist government bodies to help them build a tractor warehouse and buy 3 tractors for the community from Production Inc. Farm A and Farm B both requires 2 tractors for 1 season of the year, but Farm A is unable to afford both tractors at this point in time. Farm C, on the other hand, requires 3 tractors also for 1 or 2 seasons of the year. Farm D has a slightly smaller farm, but requires a tractor almost all year round. In this case, they decide that Farm A, C, and D can become co-owners of the tractors, with C paying for the lion's share, while Farm A can rent or borrow the 2 tractors for the time being. They agree to split profits accordingly and help Farm C pay off their investment and Farm A their debt. When the 3 tractors arrive, Farm D takes 1 tractor for their use, and Farm A then pays to use the tractor first, which is then returned to the communal warehouse for checking and repair before heading off to Farm B. Farm B and D then repeat the process, sending the tractor to Farm C, who maintains the unit for the rest of the year. After the year has ended and profits have turned in, they come to the conclusion that they are able to afford an additional tractor for the communal warehouse. They then call on the communist government agents to help them negotiate for an additional tractor with the production company, with a plan moving forward for growth each year after that. This is basically communists at work. Capitalism, in contrast, is where farmers buy or rent their own equipment from corporations directly for themselves and have no need to share with others. This can be very expensive and lead to a competition among farmers to compete for money and tools. Corporations can take advantage of this by continuously hiking up prices for minimal innovation and by limiting production of these tools. This leads to a disadvantaged farmers falling further behind and out of business or seeking social welfare from government bodies, who then implement draconian policies to bail them out or increase taxes. In this example, the 4 farms directly communicate with the tractor company Production Inc. to buy tractors directly for their farms. Farm A and B both need 2 tractors, and Farm C needs 3 tractors, while Farm D has 1. However, Production Inc. only has 4 tractors at this time, initially priced at 1 cash pile each. Farm D is the first to become connected with Production Inc. and quickly makes a transaction to buy one tractor. Farm C then approaches asking for the remaining 3 tractors with 3 piles of cash. Farm A and B also want tractors. As demand is higher than supply, Product Inc. then raises the price of the tractors. Not wanting to miss out, Farm A agrees to pay for one tractor at the price of 2 piles of cash. With 2 tractors left, Farm B and C comes to negotiate for them. Farm B is unable to pay 2 piles of cash for one tractor, thus their investment is declined. An agreement is reached with Farm C to buy both for a discount price of 3 piles of cash, as initially they wanted 3. Farm B misses out and thus asks the government for assistance, who then throws money and taxes at the issue. But then it is too late. Production Inc. wants 3 piles of cash for one tractor. This is basically how capitalism works today. Imperials will of course spread discourse and propaganda against socialists and communists. However, even amongst the well-read circles, people will often say that modern China is not a socialist country and is stuck midway between capitalist and a socialist model. Other individuals who claim to know socialism or communism claim that China is in fact a fascist and imperial country. I don't know if the latter is intentional, but I think both are very incorrect. China as of 2020 is a modestly prosperous society and is heading towards the targeted goal of a socialist society that is prosperous, strong, democratic, culturally advanced, and harmonious by 2049. This is clearly evident by the example I gave before, and in fact the People's Republic of China already has many similar programs in place for many of the industries. The Chinese model is one that persists with the trappings of a capitalist market economy with communist programs and a socialist government. Capitalism, which still exists and persists, is implemented in a way that is a bit more fair and progressive in China, and at this time they only contribute to about 20% of the economy of China. In the next part of Socialism and Marxism Explained, we will dive into the democratic system of modern China and what it means by dictatorship of the proletariat. I want to end with this quote. Capitalism has always been a failure for the lower class. It is now beginning to fail for the middle class. Thank you for joining me on Discovering Communism. I hope you were able to learn a few things you didn't know before. If you like what you saw, please give a thumbs up and consider subscribing. If you have any suggestions or topics you would like me to potentially talk about or would want to help out for the channel, please send me a tweet or an email. Remember, part 2 will be coming soon. Thanks again for watching and have a good one. The Marxist Technocrat, signing out.